Hey there, guys. This is Hendrik Taladar, and today we're joined by JEFFRAIDER, who will take us through a quick fitting tutorial on fitting a rattlesnake in EFT. Okay, so we're here in EFT. So let's just do a really quick overview of how to use EFT, Jeff. Like, what all do I need to know as a relative rookie when it comes to Eve fitting and ship
Sure.
fitting?
Yeah, well, I set up my EFT in a couple really quick basic ways. The first thing you should do is go to the character editor. Whoops. Character. Yeah, there we go. What you can do here is actually import your skills using. Oops. Wait, cancel that. Da. Yeah. Anyway, you can import your actual skills or use all level 5. I tend to use all level 5 just for curiosity. The only skills I don't really have at 5 are kind of inconsequential to the rattlesnake. The other thing I like to do is go to preferences here, and I like to hide the without skills character. I leave include reload time and DPS unchecked because it kind of skews the numbers. And you can set up right here so it price synchronizes every day, which I definitely recommend because that way you get things like this. I'll just bring up a rattlesnake here. It shows the oops, here we go. So it shows you the price, which is synced off evecentral.com. So it's really nice. It gives you a really close approximation as to what the price lag should be on TQ. And that's basically why I've chosen this ship to do this for, the Rattlesnake. It's really cheap right now for what you get out of it. See here, it's 465 million in JETA, which is just, I think, only about 80 million more than a Gila at the moment. So it's really good value just for what you can get out of it, as you'll see here. So, rattlesnakes are generally shield tanked. So what we're going to do is start by adding the tank. Now, the first thing for any tank, basically, with only a few exceptions in EVE, is the damage control 2. I'm just going to add one of those here. And you see that jumps the EHP up to 82,000, which is already pretty decent battleship EHP, and all we've done is add a damage control to this. Now, another rule of thumb with battleships that are shield tank is you don't really need shield extenders generally. So what I'm going to do for a tank here is just add 2 invuln fields, invulnerability field 2s. And the main thing with this is already added to 111, and the best way to get value out of the rigs for tanking would be core defense field extenders. And I'm just going to go down to the large ones here. Boom! So we're up to 142,000 EHP. Now, a cool thing in doing EFT is overheat, and that's what these green checkboxes are. Those turn them on and off. And you can also right-click on them to apply heat. And you see that jumps us up to 151 with 1 overheated and 160 with 2. So I'm going to slide this down here. And if you see that, if modules that are next to each other affect each other adversely when they're heated. So these two together, side by side, only overheat for 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Whereas if I were to drag it down as far away from it as it can get, it's 14 minutes, 30 seconds. So that's just a good rule of thumb on any battleship. Any ship, really. You want to pay some attention to how the heat is going to affect. Now, rattlesnakes are drone boats. If you look here, you just mouse over this in EFT, gets a 10% bonus to kinetic and thermal missile damage, 4% to shield resistances, and a huge 275% bonus to sentry and heavy drone damage and hit points. So it's really good. Now, sentries are always an option, but there's a drone that was released, a limited edition drone called a Gecko, that I'm going to use for this. The Gecko is basically 2 heavy drones, and it comes with a lot of cool things. It's got better tracking than an Ogre 2. It's got omni damage, so it does 20, basically each damage type equally. And they're actually pretty fast as well. So I'm just going to right-click on this, and we can go down. We can also see that the drone itself has a lot of hit points. It's got almost 20,000 raw hit points before any resists. So these drones are very tough for enemy frigates or whatever to kill. So your DPS isn't getting shaved off very quickly. And you see 0.85 tracking is really good. Optimal of 6,000, fall 5,000 means that when it settles into its orbit around the target, it actually does a really good job. It orbits at 3,200. So it does an awesome job of applying DPS. Right, and so we see over here, damage per second is 461 at this point. So that's just with 1 Gecko. So what we're going to do with the low slots here is, since we're shield tanking, we don't need these for any other sort of tanking modules, so we can just feel free to go crazy with drone damage amps. So I'm going to add 3 of these. Boom, and we're already up to 770 DPS, which is really good. And this is just from basically half of the Rattlesnake's missile weapon systems. Now let's add some high slots. So we've got three options here, basically. We've got cruise missiles, torpedoes, and rapid heavy missiles. Cruise missiles are always a good option. They've recently gotten buffed, so they actually apply damage a bit better. You'll get really good range out of them, probably as far as I can lock or farther. So let's just try and add some cruise missile launchers here. So we see that pumps the damage up to 996, but if you remember up here, it gets a bonus to kinetic and thermal. So I'm just going to go through and change that to, say, faction Inferno, which is a faction thermal. So now we're up to 1160 DPS, which is pretty good. 148 kilometer range, but that doesn't matter that much because we only have 93 kilometer lock range at this point. So we can pretty much shoot as far as we can knock. Now the other option would be torpedoes. Torpedoes are awesome for raw DPS. The problem with them is that they have such poor damage application that you really need a lot of modules in the mid slots here to make them worthwhile. But the Rattlesnake has a ton of mid slots and already plenty of tank at 160,000, so it's actually an option. So let's see what some thermal torpedoes look like. So we're up to 1308 DPS, which is really good, and that's totally viable. But when I go out PvPing, I generally find myself fighting gangs with lots of frigates, and I need to be able to kill tackle to have a chance at leaving if the fight's going poorly. So I don't think I'm going to go with torpedoes, even though it's totally a viable option. Now, last option is the rapid heavy missile launchers. These are new modules, and what they are is they're a battleship-sized way to fire heavy missiles, and they work just like the rapid light missiles, so they fire 20 rounds and then they have a 35-second reload time. But it's really good because that's a lot of burst DPS, so let's swap these over to Faction Inferno, and that's 1218, so really we're only losing about 100 DPS before damage mods by selecting these, with much better damage application to smaller stuff. And we have two empty slots at the bottom here, so I'm going to add two ballistic control systems. Boom. So now we're up to 1428 DPS. So we're pretty much set as far as damage goes. Like, 1400 DPS is awesome. But we can do even better because we can overheat these. And if you see, rapid heavies overheat really well. And it kind of synergizes with their reload time because they only last about, well, let's see how long they last. 2.4 second duration times 20. So, you know, basically, these you'll be able to fire almost an entire volley, entire missile cycle without burning out your mods. Probably shouldn't, though, because it's going to cut it really close at 57 seconds. Right, so now let's talk about the mid slots. I'm going to use this ship for solo PvP. And I do this just because I don't like to have to tell people where I'm going. I don't like having to worry about anybody else in the fleet. So I really like just going out in a battleship, picking a fight that I'm probably going to lose, but having fun while I do it. So we want to add tackle mods that'll help us get kills. So first thing I'm going to add is a Faint Epsilon Warp Scrambler. This is a module that will disable a micro warp drive, and the Faint Epsilon version just means it's the Meta 4 version of the module, and it's actually as good as and better than T2. In fact, I can show you why right now. Warp Scrambler. Here's a T2 version. It uses more CPU. It and it does the same range. Pretty much everything else is the same, but you'll see that here. Hang on. Right. One of them will overheat for here. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Oh, okay, well, never mind. Tag with it. Meta 4 modules basically have better heat application. This isn't showing it very well, but whatever. So we'll get rid of that. Put that right in the middle, and now we're still left with 4 slots, which is lots. Now, on battleships, you frequently want a heavy cap booster, but on this battleship, I don't think it's that necessary, honestly. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in 2 webs. So you can use the fleeting propulsion inhibitor. So just try and picture this for a second. Someone comes to try and kill my Rattlesnake. You know, it's a shiny-looking target, very slow, and they're trying to hold me down so the rest of their gang can come and blob me. This now gives me a chance to kill even frigates in 1 or 2 volleys of this Gecko drone by dual webbing it and scramming it. And I can basically warp off then. Or, well, sorry, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but here's my plan for one of the other slots. This ship with a micro warp drive is not very fast. It's 855 meters. I don't feel like I'm going to get much value out of that. Might be good while reapproaching a gate, but what I'd prefer to do is add a micro jump drive here. The really cool thing about micro jump drives is that they can't be. You can basically be warp disrupted or in a bubble and still activate it, and it'll jump you 100 kilometers, which is really neat. The only thing that stops it's a scrambler. But if they're scrambling me, I'm able to scram them back and have a chance at getting kills. So I really like this kind of synergy here. I'm able to kill things within 9 kilometers and escape if they're outside 9 kilometers. So let's say I've got a whole gang that's got me pointed and that sort of thing. I can just clear out the things that are close and then hopefully leave. And we've got one slot left here. So what do we want to do with this? Right now we have 160k EHP. I could try a shield extender and just have a look and see what that's going to do. If I want more tank, puts us up to 181. Great. I could go for a painter here, a target painter, phased weapon ponage thing. And this will increase my damage application as well. But I think I'm pretty good on damage application. I think I'm pretty good on tank. But since there's nothing that's really better for this, what I'm going to add is an extra large ancillary shield booster. So ASB. Yeah, there we go. And so this module is really cool. Here's what it does. It gives you shield on demand, basically. It's pretty much like a buff on demand. You see it opens up my active tank to 1,000 DPS tanked. That's really good. But I'm not going to count on it to actually tank the damage, like to permanently tank it. I'm just going to use it to increase the buffer of the ship. So let's have a look at that here. When I overheat it, check the module. Shield boost 1,000 per cycle, and it fires it every 4 seconds. So my plan with this is going to be is when my Rattlesnake's shields go down by even 1,000 or 2,000, I'm going to start firing this as soon as possible. So the idea there being, when this gang is killing me, I'm using up all 9 charges of this, which will add, 10,000 shield basically, and then it'll start at 60-second reload. And my hope is to get another cycle off while using the rest of this huge tank, 25,000 shields, to hold the enemy off. So yeah, so this is basically a nice way to add tank, and it's better than a large shield extender. All right. One more spot we can put a mod in here, high slot. Now, it's got no more weapon slots here, and you can see that in the top right. But what I'm thinking is I want to add something that'll help me escape or help me get kills. There's two options, basically. A heavy neutralizer or a smart bomb. The heavy neuts are cool. It'll drain a frigate's cap in one hit, which will help me kill it. But the cycle time on heavy neutralizers is so slow, I'm really not a fan of them in just, single-use things. And basically, it's not helpful in escaping a frigate, because when you cycle a heavy neutralizer onto a frigate, it will definitely remove all of its cap. It takes about 600 cap away. Most frigates don't have that. But frigates regenerate cap really quickly. And if you look at the scrambler here, its activation cost is 3. So basically, all it takes is the frig pilot to click his module again after it turns off, and he can instantly re-scramble me. So I'm going to add a smart bomb. And smart bombs are going to be good for me because, you see, I've still got plenty of capacitor here, 5 minutes, 24 seconds, running the smart bomb as well. And this will help me kill enemy drones. So let's say I'm covered in a lot of ships here. This does 300 EM damage every 7.5 seconds, or I can overheat it, which I'll probably do, and it does it every 6.3 seconds. That'll kill a flight of EC-300s in about 18 seconds, Warrior 2s in about 25 seconds, in that kind of range. So it's a really nice way to take some of the damage off. Yeah, and so basically what we're looking at here, I guess we're pretty much done here. We're looking at a ship that costs 551 million that you can insure for basically get 130 million or 90 million back. So it brings the price down to 460 million, which is super cheap, especially for a ship that's doing 1,500 DPS, as well as having 160,000 EHP and an ASB to boost the cap on it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
And so for this ship, you use it mostly for solo roping. Could you actually use it in a fleet or a small roaming gang, or is it more specifically because of how it's fit, aimed solely at solo?
I would say it's mostly solo for this, but the Rattlesnake's a super versatile ship. So for a fleet, let's say, I could just disable this Gecko, add in, say, bouncers, and you see it fits 2 bouncers here. Bouncer range is 52,000 optimal, 48,000 fall off. So that gives this a chance for damage application all over the entire lock range, which is really nice. Like, for example, if a Falcon starts jamming you, that sort of thing. And you see you don't lose too much DPS, so If we felt like it, if we felt like, say, hey, Hendrik, you want to go roaming, I'd probably redo this to remove a bit of this and probably keep everything else and add an omnidirectional. And omnidirectional tracking link, is this the one? Yeah. This will help either increase the range of the bouncer or the tracking speed, which I'll probably go with tracking speed. So, and also for a fleet, we could even do something where we take off the smart bomb, add in a remote rep, maybe even, and then we'd have to add a cap booster. But there's tons of different ways you can do this. I haven't seen a Rattlesnake fleet yet. I don't know if they scale that way, but in a small gang, you'd certainly do it like that. You could also maybe add a micro warp drive. There's tons of options, basically.
Thank you very much for doing this quick overview on how to fit a rattlesnake and use EFT, Jeff. And for more EVE Online articles and videos, visit us at crossingzebras.com.